Most people overcomplicate launches and end up exhausted with mediocre results. Today, I've got Scott Oldford with me, business strategist and entrepreneur mentor, and he's breaking down the simplest launch framework I've ever seen. We're talking a sequence that actually works: warm up, webinar, deeper content, and a 72-hour close. Emails, ads, social, text, all mapped out. Scott's going to walk us through exactly how AI can help you execute this entire launch system faster and with way less effort. Hello, Scott. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you and excited to go through this today and hopefully help you on your launch if you're listening to this, whether you've your first one or you've done 100 of them, make life a little bit easier for you. So,
Abs-
yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. We love that. So, yeah, we really, really appreciate you being here because it's one of those things where you're making all the content and you're doing all the things, but you actually want to be able to launch it as well. So, we're so excited to have you here. What are we going to go through today?
So I think is I have a Google document in front of me, and I figured that one of the easiest ways to be able to go through this is not slides or anything like that, but just to walk through what I've learned in having literally done hundreds of my own launches and have planned and helped clients on literally thousands of launches, right from them being six figures right up to multi eight figure launches in so many different industries and seeing the good, bad, and ugly of a launch, right? And so, first, I want to define what a launch is. Okay, so there's two different types of launches, right? So the first launch is what I'd say is a promotional launch, right? And that simply is I'm bringing more attention to something, right? So, uh, uh, that is really, hey, I'm just talking about something, and I'm talking about it for a defined period of time, more than I would normally talk about it. Right. And then the second would be is what I would say is a real product launch, right? And that means something that's brand new. Right? You've never done it before. It's brand new. It's a brand new product, or whatever it might be. And so, what based upon which one this is going to radically change how you actually launch. And so that's the first part. The second part is to understand the mindset going into your launch, to understand because your mindset going into a launch is going to radically change the entire launch. And most people, when they go to a launch, there's implied anxiety. And as soon as there's implied anxiety, you're going to do a bunch of things you probably don't need to do. You're going to second guess yourself. You're going to have some perfectionism come in. Whatever mindsets, patterns you have, which is ironic because the manuscript of my next book called The Pattern, which is about mindset, is right in front of me. And whatever those patterns is pretty much going to depict what happens with launches. And so I do a lot of launches. I do two launches a month. It's just part of my business model. And people always ask, well, how do you do that? I'm like, each launch might take me 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours at the absolute maximum. And rarely do they make me less than six figures. Majority of them are anywhere from a quarter of a million to half a million each time I do a launch within the next 60 days of that launch. So for me to not do a launch, that's silly. And then the other aspect, from a mindset perspective, is okay, if I know what patterns I have going into this, how can I make this as relaxed as possible? Not because I'm lazy, but because if I'm relaxed, I'm going to be able to come from a much better thinking place. Right. So we make the best decisions, it's proven. We make the best decisions when we do not have the inner tax of anxiety. And by starting out this entire scenario with that, we're able to create whatever launch it is in a much easier way. And of course, what also happens if you do that is, let's say you write an email, or let's say you do something, um, you're probably not going to second guess it, right? You're going to be able to be in a place where you're like, yeah, you know what? That's 95% as good as it needs to be because everything doesn't have to be perfect. Certainly, it doesn't have to be perfect at all. All right. So as soon as I know which style I want to go with, that I can go to. What's the launch event? Right. So this could be a webinar. This could be a video series. This could be X, Y, Z. It doesn't really matter. Right? It doesn't really matter what it is. What is going to matter, however, I'm just going to change the size of this so I can see two things at once. Just one moment. There we go. What really matters is is this going to resonate for your audience? And then are you going to enjoy it? And I always start with if you can enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy something, you're going to do kind of a half-ass job. You can only fake so much if you don't enjoy doing something, right? So if I'm going to go and do a 5-day challenge and 2 hours a day, and it's going to be, 10 hours throughout the week, here's what I know is going to happen. By the time the Saturday comes, by the time that my sales period starts, I'm going to be exhausted. I'm not going to want to talk to anybody. I don't even want to, I don't want someone's money anymore. I just want to relax. I want to go into a room and not come out for $18. That doesn't do any good. So we want to be able to understand whatever you're going to be excited about. What are you naturally going to be excited about? Because now you don't have to force yourself into doing something. And so it has to resonate with your audience. Right. So if you're going to go to a bunch of, let's say, people that are very on the intellectual side, uh, we're probably not going to do something that is on the a deeply, deeply emotional side. Right. So I have clients that they do, a 5-day meditation. Right? I'm not going to go to my intellectual potential clients with a meditation as my launch, because it's probably not going to do as well. Right? Not always, but most of the time. But if I'm going to go to somebody and let's say you sell some type of program in personal development, and you do, or let's say you're doing a training, you're a personal trainer, and you have a personal training product. And it's something that's going to work really well for you is like a 7-day boot camp, right? Each day, 10 minutes a day. And by the end of that, so the 7 days, it's going to go really, really well. The problem again with making it so that it's a difficult launch is is either overdoing something or trying to make it perfect, right? So what's the launch event? And then our next question is, who are we going to have as our audience? Is it your organic audience? Is your email audience? Is it your social audience? Which, of course, both of these are inside of organic. Are you doing cold ads? Right? Are you doing partnerships, sponsorships? Now, really, what it comes down here is this is where you're going to put pressure on yourself. All right. So if you go to a launch and you spend, I don't know, 10 grand on ads, you're going to have a lot of, and let's say 10 grand is a lot of money in your business, right? So let's say you're used to making 20 grand a month and you spend 10 grand on ads, which is a lot of money for you at 20K a month. You're going to have a lot of anxiety going to that launch. You're going to have a lot of like, oh my God, this is going to have to work. So my recommendation always is to build an audience and traffic strategy where if it doesn't work, quote unquote work, you're like, sweet, let's just do it again. Let's do it a new way, or whatever it might be. Or if you need to, do the same launch and just do it in multiple times. Right. Because if a launch, especially with AI, we'll get into how to use AI with this in a minute. There's some ideas, the ways I do it. But if you do this right, you can go do a launch and go to your warm audience, and then 2 weeks later, go to a completely cold audience with slight variations, using the money that you got from the first one to be able to fuel the next one. Okay. And if you do that, then you don't have anything to lose. And what happens when you don't have anything to lose? You feel relaxation. And when you're in relaxation, it's the easiest place to be in a feeling of abundance and a feeling of, you know what, this is going to be fun. This is exciting versus, oh my God, if this doesn't work, I lost all this money. And what does that mean about me? Right. The inner game of all this. That's the next part is audience. And then my question is going to be, right, is this a warm only launch? Or is this a warm plus cold? Or is this primarily built on cold? Because again, your language pattern is going to change, right? If you have an audience of 100,000 people on Instagram or an email list of 20,000 people, and they already know about you, who you are, what you do, well, the email copy is going to change, the landing page copy is going to change, like all these things are going to change. And so understanding where it's going to go and what it's optimized for, very important at the beginning. Because if you go to, let's say I go to my email audience, and I have a pretty large email audience, and my entire funnel is built to assume that nobody knows who I am and doesn't understand that I've scaled hundreds of businesses past 7 figures, and I've literally influenced billions of dollars of revenue and been doing this for well over a decade and have all the context of who Scott Oldford is. It's going to be kind of weird going inside of that funnel. Your warm audience is going to feel like an outsider. You don't want to do that. On the opposite side, even worse, if you have a launch and the entire thing's framed that assumes that somebody knows who you are, well, now somebody's going to come in and they have no context. They have no idea of like the positioning of, well, how does this person help me and why am I spending my time and so on. And so we're getting a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. Then from there, we now go and say, okay, how much time do we need to spend up front, right? Getting traffic and so on and so forth. Um, what's actually possible for signups, and what plan works that reduces my risk of not failure, but risk of like, oh my goodness, the tiger is chasing me, right? The tiger moment, right? And now we start saying, okay, let's instead of making it this a big thing, let's make it no big deal. And so generally when we get to this, we end up, I just want to make sure, is my audio still fine? I had a
Yeah,
little beat. Okay,
this
perfect.
is
Very sweet.
amazing.
Is this and
Yeah,
is
yeah,
this making sense? Is this making sense
yeah,
so far? I know you asked me a question. I just started going for it.
yeah. I'm taking
All
all of this in. I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like, I love that. Even the way you broke down whether or not the audience is warm or cold and that how that's going to affect things was so clear. So, yeah, this is
perfect.
amazing.
All right, awesome. So then what we want to do is we want to say my recommendation for most people, people always, how long do I promote the launch before I actually do it? There's two questions. So the first, right? So let's see, promotional period. Promotional period. First is um, how long can you keep the attention of who signs up? Right. So because let's say you're signing, because generally speaking, here I just want to back up for anyone that I want to assume that you have maybe never done a launch. So here's what happens with the launch. Okay. There is a sign up period, waiting until X day period, launch day, and then it could be a continuation of launch day depending on if it's a multiple days. Then there's a promotional launch day a lot of the time, and then there's a promotional window until close, and then there's a close and then potentially a downsell if that's the particular case. Okay, so that give you an example. There's 7 days, and in those 7 days a bunch of people sign up, and then on Thursday there's a webinar, and then on Friday, Saturday, and then the cart opens for whatever's being sold, and then on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is the time in which someone can buy, and then the next Thursday perhaps there's a downsell or there's a hey, it's all done. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted the backup to make sure that you understand that. Unfortunately, one of the issues when I share things with people is I have sometimes assumptions that they know things that they may not, and that's on me more than is on you. And I just want to make sure that I'm able to transfer my experience and wisdom as easily as possible, and not assume that you've done things that you may not have done just yet, but you're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So the how long can you keep attention span? So think about it this way: if I'm signing people up for a webinar and the webinar is 3 weeks into the future, do you think majority of people are going to remember that they signed up for a webinar 3 weeks into the future? Of course not. Very, very unlikely. Right. So that means that two things. One, it can't be too far into the future. And if it is somewhat into the future, we've got to get them to, let's say, sign up for the launch event, the webinar, the video series, whatever. And then we got to entertain them and like hype up what it is, or no one's going to show up for the thing. Right. So that's the first thing. And then the second part is how long can I talk about the same thing? Right. So this is a you and you thing. Okay. Me, for some reason, I have a hard time talking about the same thing more than like 7 days. After 7 days, I'm like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I know if I talked about it for 2 weeks, I'd probably make more money, but I don't care because I just cannot talk about this thing anymore, and I want to move on to the next thing. That's me. I'm more on the creative side. And if I wasn't like that, I'd make way more money in my life. But I've just decided that I'd rather be the creative, hey, here's this cool thing, and then move on to the next cool thing. And that's who I am. So for me, that means that if I do a launch for 3 weeks, a pre launch for 3 weeks, that means for the most part, that middle time, I'm going to be like, I don't want to do this today. I don't want to do this today. Now, if I'm running ads to this, like let's say I'm doing a launch to cold audience and I'm running ads and I don't need to be talking about it every day, right? I don't need to be doing videos and Instagram posts or emails each day. That's fine, right? It changes it, but it's those two things. How long can I talk about the same thing? And how long can I make it so that somebody actually can keep the attention? So what you'll find is this is somewhere between, for most people, 7 to 10 days of quote unquote pre-launch. This is getting people to sign up. And then there's the whatever 1 to 5 days of the launch event, right? So if it's a video series, you see people do video series where there's anywhere from 3 to 5 videos. Do a webinar, a summit series, kind of like this, where there's content each day or a challenge or whatever it might be. And generally speaking, that's a time where it is education, content, and bringing people towards the understanding that there's something that they might need. And remember, every single person that's coming in your world is either in the sidewalk, the slow lane, or the fast lane. Here's what I mean by that. Someone in the sidewalk, if they're signing up for your thing, what you have to do to get them to the slow lane, you have to make sure they understand the problem, the pain, the consequences. If someone's in the slow lane, they know all that. They know that there's a pain or problem, right? If you're here, let's say you're here, and I'm thinking about your relationship to wanting to learn about AI, right? So if you're here, you already know that you probably need to change the way that you're doing business to be able to utilize AI so that you can either reduce costs, make more money, or make it so that you don't kind of get fallen behind for all intents and purposes. All right. So you being signed up to this and coming to an event like this and coming to a session like this means that you're in the slow lane, which means you're looking for the method, the process. You're looking for people to look up to. You're looking for authority, right? You're looking for value, looking for education, and you're looking for results. Hey, did this person help other people do the exact same thing for me? Right. So that's a slow lane. And then in the fast lane, this is when people enter the buying period. They're looking for the solution. They're trying to take care of their objections. They're trying to understand and see the vision, and they're trying to believe in themselves to be able to do it. Right. So people have to go from believing that there's a problem to believing that there is a process, to believing there is somebody to help them with that process, to believing that there is a solution that works for them, to them believing that they can do it, and then finally being able to adopt the identity of the person that is buying whatever that is. Okay. And that could be the identity of, hey, I was resistant to AI and now I'm no longer resistant to AI. I'm actually an AI enabled business or I'm an AI first business, right? That's the identity change. And those things have to happen. And so the idea of a launch is to be able to bring somebody, generally speaking, from the slow lane, from the awareness of understanding, hey, there's something I want to change from to being able to make it so that they understand the method, the process, they see you as an authority, they understand the value, they're now educated. And at the end of that launch, they can be either like, hey, you know what? This guy is for me, this gal's for me, this solution is for me. You know, screw it. I don't want any of this. AI, I'm going to live on an acreage and disconnect from the internet. I don't want anything to do with this. Okay. So this is all that's happening. This is what's happening inside of a launch. And then from that point of the launch, we have the promotional period. Right? And the promotional period can look a lot of different ways. Generally speaking, somewhere between 5 to 10 days after whatever the launch event is, whatever the video series is, the webinar, or whatever it might be. And generally, what this would look like, make it more specific for you, is let's say there's the promotional window. My fingers are going faster than my mind's going faster than my fingers right now. So generally, I would do 1 to 2 emails a day, 1 to 2 social posts a day. Okay. And then towards the end, I would up that to 3 to 4 emails a day. And then everyone that signs up for your launch, I would be doing 1 email a day, getting them excited. Okay. So for people who signed up. All right. And so then before, let's say it's a webinar, or it's the launch, or it's the 2 p.m. on Thursday, it's the first session. If it's a webinar, I'm always going to send 4 to 6 emails, right, 24 hours in advance to make sure that people actually sign up. Now, let's say I'm doing a 5-day video series and I'm going to do 3 emails a day for the 5 days. All right. One in the very morning, one an hour before, and then one to be able to recap it. In the promotional timeline, the 24 hours after the end of whatever the launch was, I'm always wanting to do 4 emails. That's that moment where you're going to be able to get the momentum from someone coming back and looking at it, and so on and so forth. And then, generally speaking, 1 to 2 emails a day. Now, again, if I say emails, I'm a big believer of SMS, a big believer of social media, all those different types of things. Email has proven incredibly well. I've made 80% of the revenue I've made over the last decade has come from email. Yes, I use social media. Yes, I use YouTube. Yes, I use all these types of things. But in terms of the direct place that someone clicks and pushes a button and gives me money, it's email. All right. So I do 1 to 2 emails a day in that promotional in the last 48 hours. Uh, as many emails as you can with still being able to look yourself in the mirror at the end. Okay. That's the best way I put it. You want more money, send more emails. All right. So, and then of course, if you want to do a downsell, you can do a downsell. My audience doesn't perform well with downsell, so I don't do it. But the different audiences, my audience is very entrepreneur focused, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more savvy. Downsells don't do that well for me. But less sophisticated audiences do better with downsells than more sophisticated audiences generally. So then the question is, okay, sweet. I got all this stuff. And here's what it looks like. All right. So I know I'm probably going to need ads. I'm going to need social posts. I'm going to need emails. I'm going to need signed up emails. I'm going to need promotional emails. I'm going to need SMS. I'm going to need, what else do we need? I'm going to need a landing page. I'm going to need a thank you page. I'm going to need, if I'm doing a video series pages, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, when it comes to utilizing AI, I'm not going to go into, hey, you should use this tool over that tool, over this tool, over this model, over that model, because by the time that this session is actually watched, everything I say is going to be completely wrong. Here's, but here's really the simple piece of it, okay? Which is whenever you're building marketing, what you want to do first is build the launch event, okay? So let's say I'm doing a webinar. So I would build the webinar, okay? And then what I would do is I would record a transcript of a version of what I'm going to talk about, right? So it doesn't have to be the full webinar. It's going to be 2 hours. Let's say the whole webinar is 2 or 3 hours. It can be like 20 minutes. I'm going to record that whole transcript, okay? And then I would assume if you haven't already, I would make sure that you go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and give it a bunch of your writing in the past and give it that transcript and be like, hey, can you give me a tone and style and anti-AI a copy guide and guidelines? All right. So now you have a transcript, you have the tone and style guide, and then you're going to basically go and you could probably even give it a transcript of this and say, okay, hey, listen, I need a landing page and I need a thank you page. And that's the first thing you build. All right. Landing page, thank you page, and you build it from the transcript of the webinar. And then you go and say, okay, sweet. The next thing I'm going to build are all the emails. And the emails I'm going to build first are the promotional emails. Okay. And what you're going to do is, generally speaking, you're going to say, hey, listen, I want to write 12 emails and here's some stories, here's some value. And you can either do that from content you've already created or again, voice transcript and give it to them. All right. So you got the promotional emails. Then you're going to write the actual sale emails. All right. And then after you've done that, now you're going to do the kind of like show up emails and make sure people are engaged. All right. So like making sure that actually come. And the reason we do it in this way, of course, is because now the AI model, if it's writing for you, understands and knows why somebody should actually be coming to this webinar or to the launch event. Now, once we've built all this, we basically built everything else, right? So if you have social posts, you can be like, hey, now build social posts from this. If you have ads, hey, now build ads. The thing with ads, hey, if I'm doing warm retargeting, you got to make sure that you tell, hey, I'm doing warm retargeting. These people already know who I am. I don't have to prove to them who I am. Here's just to make sure that you have reference. Here's the landing page. Here's the thank you page. Here's the webinar script. And here's the promotional emails. Make sure you build 50% of the ads with value focused and 50% conversion focused. All right. And then, let's say you're doing retargeting ads, what somebody's actually in. You say, hey, we're doing retargeting ads to people that are in the launch that are directing them to the sales page. And let's go story and value based. And let's not go super hardcore fast lane conversion based, just so that we're in a place where they're buying from curiosity and they're not buying because I'm just yelling at them. Okay. And then, of course, you build whatever landing page and put it on whatever software that you put it on. I'm not here to tell you what tools to use and not use. I don't really care. in this way, you should be able to build with AI now. You should be able, let's say you don't even have any content. You should be able to build the entire launch minus, let's say, doing the live video or doing the recorded video, whichever way you go, without like just the copy, just the content of the whole launch, doing this 4 hours maximum. Uh, Add in probably maybe another like 4 hours of the technology. And then what you simply do is you just ask AI to build, an SOP and a structure and a guide for the future. And then you just, for all intents and purposes, say, hey, instead of talking about let's say for business, instead of talking about launches, we're going to talk about funnels. But funnels and launches are kind of the same. It's just two different ways of being able to talk about the same thing. And so, each time you do a launch, it's the same thing. You're just hitting a different angle, right? So and this way you can do a launch every a couple times a month, and then you just decide, okay, you know what? Sometimes we do cold launches. Sometimes we do warm only launches. Sometimes we do cold plus warm, and sometimes we do partnership or sponsorship launches. And the idea of this is that each launch is optimized differently because the flow and the emails of going to a completely cold audience is going to be different than a warm audience. The way that I sell is going to be different to cold versus warm. And it kind of changes in that way. All right. That was my spiel. I'm sure that I don't know if you have any questions specifically as I've been going through here. Um, Obviously, there's an element of like, hey, there's like 1,000 different ways you can use AI for lots of different like of the subparts. But most of this is less about AI telling you anything. It's more like getting the structure and the strategy, and then telling AI, hey, you know what? Let's go and build the copy for this.
Absolutely. This has been so, so, so interesting. So, what about oh, I had a question on the tip of my brain. Oh, yeah. So you're doing different launches every single time. So you're not taking the same launch and then doing like the same, like,
You
refining that.
can, you can. And that's the smarter option. That's the
Yeah.
smarter option. I generally don't do many smart things in my life.
Mhm.
Um, uh, here's the thing: is that is by far the smartest option you can do. Obviously, you can only run the same launch to your warm audience a couple times a year.
Mhm.
So if you're going to do that, you've got to use different traffic sources than your warm audience, or it generally will end up not working out that well for you. Basically, what will happen is that you know you'll by the time that you get to your fourth launch, you'll run out of audience unless you're doing a bunch of lead generation or you have a massive audience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So it is one of those things that we have to be aware of where the audience comes from. But say, like, if we're just using a cold audience, I suppose necessarily doing the exact same webinar every 2 weeks is not necessarily going to be the funnest thing in the world. But even if you just had
it
two webinars
works.
that you just
It works though.
alternate.
It I had a client scale from 40K a month to 1.5 million a month with doing the same webinar every Thursday night for 5 years.
Wow, is literally all I have to say. That is so cool. And it was obviously, I'm guessing, all like paid traffic because of the cold
All
audience
paid
warm.
traffic. Yeah, all paid traffic. She did all paid traffic. I mean, she burned out on this, to be clear, but hey, she burned out with a ton of money. Um, so well, it's better than being burnt out and broke. Um, so if I remember correctly, she did paid every Thursday, and then she re-invited everybody every month. I think every month from her email list. Uh, that strategy worked incredibly well. I mean, what's funny is like that's what I did back in 2015, 2016, right up until like 2017, and then I burnt out uh, doing the same thing. And it's just like you can only talk about the same thing. Yeah, if you're a little maybe a little less creative, you can do that. But if you're creative and you're just talking about the same thing over and over again, I don't know. I just feel like it's hard. But again, it just depends. Like if you optimize making money over your creativity, you can make money much more easily. I do different launches because it's like I don't know. It's fun. I would make so much more money if I mean, my wife always tells me, she's just like, "Hey, if you want to make more money, you just talk about the same thing. You have brilliant stuff, just talk about the same thing." But instead, I go and like write a new book, and which is not a very high return on investment thing to do. And I don't know. Just which one are you optimizing for? Creativity or money? That's really what it comes down
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. I love that. And I think in the beginning as well, there is that element of just doing the reps, to be honest. So even repeating the same launch a few times is going to help you to see your own blind spots. Whereas I do feel like if you are changing topic every single time in the beginning, you're not actually allowing yourself the ability to necessarily refine that process. So I do think there's a little bit of an element of even in the beginning, just do it a few times, get the reps of that exact thing, figure out how the structure needs to work for you to be able to make sales and sell off the back end of it. But yeah, I think
I
automating
totally
certain
agree. I totally agree. I totally agree. And like you got to realize, I didn't go specifically in my story, but I was $1 million in debt in 2014 from some businesses not working out that well. And so in 2015, and I had a marketing agency and a programming agency. And then in 2015, I started teaching people online marketing and stuff because, I was doing it for such a long time up to that point. And I did probably in the span of 18 months, I did about 350 live webinars. So I was doing 5 webinars a week live. Um, and I have a slight PTSD just thinking about it. But I went from half a million in 2015 to 3 million in 2020. Sorry, in 2015, I did half a million. 2020, 2016, I did 3 million. 2027, I did 7 million, and I took 3 months off. Um, so it worked. But keep in mind, those webinars were pretty much the same. So like, does it work? 100% it works, hands down. Um, and so yeah, I guess probably best advice is try to get one or two to work versus doing a bunch of them. That sounds good point on that. Good point on that. My track record shows that a repetition works more than just being a creative all day.
Yeah, but even, like, that repetition allows you to figure out, like, yeah, the things that you're doing or not doing, and I think yeah, I think both work because I think once you've kind of got the system down, then you can plug in any topic. But if you haven't necessarily got the system and you keep changing topic, you can't necessarily see what's not working. So I think there's an
Eh,
element of both there, which is
and it's I used to suck at like webinar. I mean, when I started, I was not very good at it. And is there lots of people way better than I am now for sure. But I mean, in 2015, 2016, 2017, I did those webinars, and I would probably was doing 3 to 5 podcasts a week. Like I got really good in those years and at being able to articulate ideas and myself. And I wasn't good at that up to then. Like I mean, could I get better today? Absolutely. But just like my wife is much better at being able to articulate anything than I am. But if it wasn't for that 3 years of just rep, 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 and like I'll be honest with you, not just like rep, but like rep and more failure than success. I remember one of the first webinars I ever went on, there was only 2 people live. And you're doing like a 2.5 hour webinar for 2 people. And it's just those days where you're like, I'm gonna look back at this as like just like I'm looking back at it right now. I'm gonna look back at this in a decade and be like, wow, remember that time that only 2 people showed up, and and you're there, and you're the whole time you're like, man, I should just like end this and pretend that the technology like malfunctioned because this is a waste of time. But you go through it, you do it, and you come out the other side, and nobody buys it, and then you do the webinar the next day, and 20 people are there, and you're like, well, it's better than two, and that's business.
yeah. I love this. I have so many questions, but I'm gonna start with the first one. Say someone is relatively new to online marketing and all of that sort of stuff, and say their combined audience is less than 5,000 people. So, say their email list has, 700 people. And then, across their social media channel, like maybe they have 1,500 on Facebook,
Now,
1,000 on Insta. Would you still recommend two emails a day?
if you can, if you can get yourself to do it, yes.
Okay.
Do I think that most people can mentally get there? You gotta think about it. Most of us are afraid of being annoying. It's one of those things that we learn in public education. It's one of the first things we learn. Don't be annoying. So, because of course we want to be included in our peer groups. So don't be annoying, right? Is that's the first thing. So what the really interesting thing is, if you want to get rich in online and you're not in online marketing or have an online business, you gotta like absolutely forget about that completely. You have to you have to just be the most annoying person in the room. It's just like this. It's like either you care about that and you're gonna have a hard time in online marketing, or you get rid of that and you make a lot of money. So I've gotten really good at just not caring about being quote unquote annoying or not. And the simple point's this, which is if you send 20 emails to your email list, the maximum someone's ever going to open is four, maybe five, right? Unless they're the diehard fans, right? I have the diehard people on my email list that open every single email, but they're far and few between. So we know that if someone opens an email, they probably read 4 seconds of that email. So that means that if you send 20 emails, they've spent effectively less than 25 seconds thinking about you or what you do. So if you want to make more money, it's a really simple equation how to make more money. You get people to pay more attention to you for a longer period of time, which makes it so that eventually their their attention turns into money because attention flows where, or sorry, money flows where attention goes. That's just money 101. Wherever there's attention, there's always money. So if you want more money, you got to get someone to pay more attention to you and whatever it is that you're selling.
Absolutely love that. Thank you. What about, okay, so when you are doing your marketing and you're putting out, because you've got your launch in 10 days and you're putting out your Instagram posts and you're doing your email marketing and all of that sort of stuff, are you still mixing through content and emails that aren't related to the launch so that you're not just hardcore banging on that, or is everything targeted?
Well, everything, I mean, it doesn't have to be, every email doesn't have to be sign up for my thing, sign up for my thing, sign up for your thing. In a perfect world, you ensure that everything that you put out is valuable by itself. Okay. So, if I'm going to launch something, I'm going to think about what are all the valuable things that I can talk about. And there's a balance of this, but there might be, I don't know, let's say I'm launching, let's say perfect example. Let's say I'm launching a book. Okay. By the time this is out, this might be out. I don't know. Who knows? So this is a book on mindset. It's called The Pattern. The subtitle is The Invisible System Behind Every Ceiling You Hit. And inside of this book are the 12 archetypes that are every single entrepreneur are at least two archetypes inside of this book. Okay. So if I'm launching this book and I'm spending 10 days about this book, what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to go and on day 4, I'm going to do a full post about the shiny object chaser. You're not distracted. You're using momentum as a way to avoid the one thing that would actually work. All right. And I'll go into that. And then at the end, be like, hey, coming up is my launch on my brand new book, The Pattern. Make sure you get the link below to be able to do it or whatever it might be. Okay. And so that would be, so whatever the launch is, your launch content shouldn't just be, hey, time for my thing. It should be, hey, here's the value so that it brings that person in. And the person's like, oh, wow, this is interesting. Let me see what else is here.
Love that. Thank you so much. And then what about like what you're actually selling on the back end? So, for example, we've talked a little bit about doing a webinar, or you could do an online summit, or you could do a 5-day challenge. And then are you selling into, say, a sales call? Or if you have something that's worth, like for example, with your book, are you just
Yeah.
selling straight into the book? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So is my screen still being shared here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let me put it this way. If you're selling something below $500, you can easily sell that on a webinar or, directly in email. Okay. If you're selling something that's $5,000 to $3,000, you generally can sell that via application, phone call. But a lot of times you can actually do this via DM, and you'll actually have a better close rate versus just doing phone calls. And the reason's very simple. People don't want to talk to people as much anymore. And so that it's just quite simply the fact that someone would rather be like, hey, let me just do this over text. If it's over $3,000, I would say that generally speaking, unless you have an incredible amount of authority, um, you should probably do a phone call. Okay, and so that's generally how I would look at, from a price point perspective. This is going to depend though on certain things. Okay, so I'm going to plug this right now because why not? So I have a whole system called LaunchOS, which helps people plan their launches. And so one of the things that it does, and we'll go back because it's very important, is it helps somebody understand what uh, um, type of launch to do based upon how big their audience is, what price point they're selling, like all of these different types of things. Okay. And so like audience so all right, source quality. Where's the source coming from? Paid ads. Get out of this. Next. Oh, of course. Oh, I no, I see what's going on. It's all locked because I already did this. Yeah, never mind. It's like, let me reset this. Let me go reset. Here we go. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to go start planning. And then I'm going to go down here. All right. So let's say it's a webinar close. Okay. So you got to realize that, like, from an audience temperature perspective, my audience temperature in how big my audience is and how much they've seen me. And if they've been to launches before, like all these things are going to depend on, hey, can I sell via DM? Can I sell via phone calls? Can I sell via XYZ? And that's the part that, like, I can be here and and say, hey, yeah, if you're at 3K, you could do this. But if you have an audience of 1 million people, I'd be like, you know what? I'd sell via DM because you've got so much audience, it doesn't matter. Whereas let's say there's only 50 people in your launch. I say, get on the phone with any person that can get on the phone with you. So it really is going to be based on um, that piece on an individual basis.
Yeah, that's super, super, super interesting. And do you want to show us a little bit about that software? Because I'm like, that looks so cool. And it is like, it just makes life so much easier.
Yeah. So basically, without me going, so, so what this does is it literally tells you which launch to do. Okay. So my audience knows me. My audience is 2 to 10K. Yeah, I'm happy to show up live. It does need belief and context. I'm optimizing for revenue. And yes, I'm comfortable saying no. And so it would be like, all right, here's this open and close. I'm going to use the recommendation, and then I can decide what type that it is. And so this platform basically teaches you as you go through the platform exactly how to launch, how to build the launch. It has a full AI launch mentor that uses that's trained on a cloud that's trained on all of my launch material. It helps you ensure that you calculate the right way. It helps you build all your assets. It helps you review for the launch. It maps your timeline of everything that you should build each day. I'm not going to show it to you right here because it'll take 20 minutes. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But it'll literally be like, all right, on Monday, this needs to go out. And then you can basically go in and build all those different assets. And then with the scoreboard, each day at the end of the day, you'd be like, all right, 50 people signed up for this. 40 people. Here was my open rate for the email. And in real time, it'll give you feedback and recommendations, and then also give you some mindset coaching as you go through the whole launch. Because obviously, I've done this so many times, I know what people are going to go through. And then, of course, the training section makes it so that every single part, instead of doing video trainings, we took all of my launch training, had about 8 hours of launch training, and we put it into these small pieces. So if you're like, okay, hey, I want to learn about, you know, the pre-launch mechanics. Of course, we get a 404 page on a live. That's always fun. But let's say if you're visioning, you'd go in and be like, all right, here's the process I bring my private one-on-one clients through on actually visioning the launch, and then bringing that into from vision to execution. And then, of course, it allows you to build as many launches as you want, that type of thing. So that's LaunchOS. It's onlinebusinesslaunchplanner.com. And, we put it up. It's still in beta. It's in V2. V2 is coming out in April. And it basically takes everything that I've ever learned, everything that I teach people on launches. And this came from like literally just from the place of, I never want help. I never really want to help someone plan a launch ever again. And so when a one-on-one client comes to me, I'm like, hey, go do this, and then just send me the brief that it sends you at the end on the launch review. And I'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. Or, no, you need to change this. And so that's what we built.
I love that. And does it write all the emails for you, basically?
No, it does not. So the entire intention of this is that everything that I built. So this is part of my larger online business scaling suite. So the whole scaling suite. So this is one of the many platforms inside. And so the whole idea of this is that this is the strategic layer that AI currently doesn't have. So the biggest problem right now with AI and getting it to write something or build something is that it just brings you down whatever rabbit hole it decides that day. And so if you've never done a launch before and you get a launch plan from Claude or ChatGPT, it looks great. And you have no idea if that makes any sense for you whatsoever. And most of the time it doesn't. So everything that I'm building, Launch OS, Funnel OS, Organic OS, Ads OS, all of these, all the different platforms, every single one of them is purely based on, let's understand you, your business, and where you're going. Let's ensure that you have the right strategy. Let's help you co-create the strategy with AI that's trained on someone, aka me, a strategy that has successfully helped entrepreneurs scale businesses for over a decade. Then let's take that plan, and then you can go and write copy in whatever system you want, whether it's Perplexity, whether it's Claude, whether it's Grok. I don't really care. But if we give AI guardrails and it understands what you're doing, now it's beauty, right? Without that, it's quite honestly, it brings you in a rabbit hole, and you have no idea if that rabbit hole is going to work or not. So that's really what LaunchOS does.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that extra detail and also
Of course.
helping us to understand why that's better than AI just spitting out emails for us, which I totally 100% agree with. But I am aware of the time, and it has been
Of
so,
course.
so amazing to have you here. You are literally amazing. I feel like I could ask you like 100 more questions for another whole hour, but this has been fabulous. Where can people find you? Where do you hang out the most?
You can just go over to scottoldford.com, and then from there you can get all of my stuff. I have half a dozen books out into the world, everything from scaling and messaging and marketing and all those different types of things. And then, of course, all of my free resources and that type of stuff that you can get here. And then I'll just end and say the scaling plan is this platform I built. And if you go into the scaling plan, it literally is the exact way I help someone build the strategy. And then from that strategy, you're able to say, hey, you know what? I should do a launch right now. And you know what? Right now is not the time to do a launch. And so, yeah. So if you go to scuttlesford.com, it brings you through all the different paths, no matter if you're starting out or you have a $3 million a year business. I've really built an ecosystem for any online entrepreneur that's scaling.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Scott.
You got it.